What's going on, guys? It's Jared the Grappler back at it again, talking about Jared the Grappler's Guide to MMA, cage generalship, and positional management. What does that mean? I mean, you'll find out, but when you're in a fight, you're not just going out there throwing punches. The position matters, and I'm going to be telling you guys how can you manage the position of the fight, because whoever dominates the position dominates the fight more often than not. Linear attacks are going to be the primary tool when it comes to addressing another fighter's forward momentum, which is to say that yes, you can technically do a check hook or throw an overhand and catch somebody as they're coming in, but there's nothing that's going to ensure that you are going to hit your opponent like an attack that is coming straight at the angle your opponent is coming from. When your opponent is coming directly at you, a linear attack will be the most efficient way of managing distance. A lot of people wrongly assume that your front side is going to get better range than your rear side, but this just isn't true. As you can see, with the cross, you end up getting slightly more range than the jab for whatever reason. Whereas when it comes to kicking, because you're actually coming across the plant foot, which will be the front foot, you'll have about a foot, if not more range when it comes to rear-legged attacks. In lower levels of fighting, fighters will tend to rely on looping shots, such as big kicks or big overhands, in order to do damage because they generate a lot of momentum and therefore power. However, in my opinion, a better usage of them is because they're easier to see coming, you can essentially suggest which direction somebody wants to go. If you're going to throw a right kick at me and you land it one time, I'm no longer going to circle towards your right. So I'm either going to stand in front of you or I'm going to circle away from it. When you generate enough ability to control me because I'm afraid of getting hit, you now can get me to stand in one place to get hit. Seeing as these are only suggestions, you might be tempted to just commit to circling if you aren't Calvin Kattar. And on the flip side, what you're going to be doing is running directly into a power shot, which is a bad idea. Allow this crude diagram to represent if you and I were sparring and I were able to get you cornered, okay? I'm standing in front of you, there's a wall behind you. You could either go this way or you could either go this way. All right? Me, having fight IQ, I should be able to predict this. If I'm standing orthodox, I could throw a right kick over there to prevent you from going that way, or I could throw a switch kick, or if I'm pretty spinny, I could do maybe a spinning hook kick to prevent you from going that way. I don't need to necessarily land it either. As long as I've threatened that I have it within my repertoire, you will be thinking about it, and you're more likely to just stand there and allow me to hit you. People use a compass because a reference point is useful for navigation. If you've been going north for a while, if you turn around and go south, you'll go back the way you came from. It's not that different when it comes to actually fighting in MMA. Before I get too deep on this, it's important to understand stances and stance profiles. The stances are orthodox and southpaw. Orthodox meaning that your left leg is forward, southpaw meaning that your right leg is forward. The stance profiles are their relationships to one another. So an open stance profile is going to mean that an orthodox fighter is fighting a southpaw fighter. A closed stance profile means that a southpaw is fighting a southpaw or an orthodox is fighting an orthodox. Your reference point for your MMA compass should be the shot that your opponent wants to throw. Generally speaking, your coach is probably going to tell you to circle away from your opponent's power hand, which is not bad advice by any means. However, you're going to be circling both directions throughout the fight. Just understand that if you're circling towards their power hand, you might get caught with it. In a closed stance profile, whichever way you circle, your opponent will be circling as well, which means that if you're going towards the power hand or the rear hand, they're going towards your power hand or rear hand as well. Whereas if you're circling away from it, so are they. When it comes to an open stance profile, you need to understand that whichever way you are circling with respect to your opponent is circling the opposite way for you, which is to say that if I circle towards the outside foot or away from your power hand, you are going to be circling toward my power hand. And this is because I'm going towards my front side and you're going towards your rear side. You can attain outside foot position, which is a term that's commonly thrown around within the combat sports community, by simply putting your foot a couple inches on the outside of your opponent's. What this is going to accomplish is it's going to create an angle where your rear side shoulder or hip are better lined up with your opponent's center line, meaning that you have a faster angle to get your power shots off than your opponent does. All this is a lot of words to say that you should try to maximize the amount of time that your opponent is going towards your strong side, whereas you are trying to minimize the amount of time that you're going into your opponent's strong side. If there's one and only one takeaway that you could have from this video, I want you to understand that discomfort is going to encourage your opponent's decision making, which is to say, if you're my opponent and you're walking me down and I'm uncomfortable, I might jab you in the face as you're stepping in. And after I land a couple of those, you're not going to want to walk forward anymore. You might start circling left or right. If you start circling to my left too hard, I could throw a switch kick. If you keep doing that, I'll do it again. Because if it works, do it again. You'll circle to my right, and I'll start kicking you in the right. And eventually you'll start moving far more predictably. If I start overwhelming you, because I understand the angles of attack better, because I understand my MMA compass, you might even start moving backward, because you'll feel, I can't have any success circling to the left. I can't have any success circling to the right. I can't go forward or else I'll get jabbed. So now you'll make this trend of going backwards until eventually you hit a wall. Everything else that I talked about, whether it's linear attacks, angular attacks, the MMA compass, I feel like I could make 1, 2, 10 videos about those because there's simply so much information to cover, and that's coming from me. I don't even know everything. I learn more about those concepts every single day. But when it comes to the wall, I feel like it's pretty straightforward. You're in a confined space. You can move backward in open space all you want, but the moment you hit a wall, that's a physical barrier. There are only 2 physical objective barriers within that fight. And that's your own body. Your opponent does not have the ability to walk through you, and they don't have the ability to walk through walls either. So, if you're able to successfully get the person backed up into a wall, they're going to be trapped between a rock and a hard place.